Welcome back to The Critique. Today we're looking at a high-energy political commentary video by Nuxanor. It contrasts crime and immigration in New York and the UK, and it all builds to an endorsement of the Restore Britain Party.
Yeah, this is a really dense piece. Very high-octane delivery style, so I think we should just get right into the mechanics of it.
Absolutely. So, let's start with the overall tone and style. The material leans so heavily on internet slang and gaming terms.
Right.
You have things like PvP server, infinite retards, and NPCs being used to describe these, pretty grave sociopolitical issues.
And that's the thing. That's his brand. And it works. But I think we've identified a real weakness there. While that language absolutely resonates with that terminally online or Gen Z audience, it creates this really jarring tonal dissonance when you're talking about, truly horrific crimes, like the Rochdale grooming gangs or showing police officers getting stabbed.
Yeah.
Using terms like retards and aura farming right next to descriptions of mass child abuse. It just risks trivializing the victims. It puts up a wall.
A wall for who specifically?
Well, for potential allies, people who might actually agree with the political stance, An older conservative maybe, or a serious policy person who just finds the delivery immature.
Yeah.
Or offensive.
I see exactly what you mean. It's like you have to know when to turn off the gamer persona if you want to be taken seriously as a political voice. So what's the suggestion here?
I think it's about strategically code switching. It's not about abandoning the style, but, maintaining that high-energy persona for the reaction parts, for making fun of politicians.
Yeah, for the fun parts.
But then adopting a much more grounded, somber tone when you're detailing specific victim accounts.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's think of a concrete example. The part about New York City, he calls it a PvP server, like immediately after showing a police officer being stabbed.
Right.
So instead of that, maybe he could frame it first as a breakdown of law and order. Take a moment of seriousness for the violence against the officer.
Acknowledge the reality first.
Exactly. Then later you can bring in the gaming analogy as a metaphor for the lack of consequences. But you have to respect the violence first.
Yeah, that anchors the viewer in reality before you pivot to the satire. It shows the audience, I know this is real life, not a video game, which ironically probably makes the satire hit even harder later on.
And another example is when he's reading those quotes from the rape gang inquiry. The details are just harrowing. Girls in dog cages.
Horrific.
At that moment, he just has to drop the Nux persona for a second. You pause the commentary about what's based or cringe. You pause the jokes about feminazis.
Just let it be silent.
Let the horror of the text just stand on its own. That contrast would make his anger feel so much more righteous and less performative. It signals that even with all the slang, we know when something is not a joke.
That's a fascinating point. You're actually using the silence to amplify the noise of the rest of the video. It makes the gamer parts feel like a necessary release of tension, not just constant noise.
Precisely. Okay, let's move on to the structure and flow. The video tries to weave together two really different stories. Zoran Memdani's run for mayor in New York and the Restore Britain Party over in the UK. But the connection feels, a bit thin.
It is thin, and I think that's the weakness. The transition hangs on this very loose thematic link he calls the peaceful religion. So you just jump from a press conference on a bus in Queens to suddenly grooming gangs in London.
Yeah, it's a bit jarring.
There's no clear thesis statement that connects those two specific political situations. It feels less like one argument and more like, two separate reaction videos that got mashed together. The viewer's kind of left doing the work to connect the dots.
Right. So the argument is there, but it's maybe too implicit. What's the suggestion for making it stronger?
The material needs a much stronger bridge argument. The idea is to frame New York not just as a similar situation to London, but as a specific stage on a timeline relative to London.
Oh, I really like that. That creates a narrative. So, for example, you could explicitly frame the New York segment, the stabbing, the accusations against Mamdani, as the early warning signs.
Okay, so New York is the beginning of the story.
Exactly. And then you frame the London segment, the measles outbreaks, the Restore Britain Party, the grooming gang stuff as the future outcome.
I see.
And you could use a specific signposting phrase to just lock it in. Something like, if New York doesn't change course now, just look at London to see where we'll be in 10 years. That turns the jump from NYPD body cam to the UK Parliament from a weird cut into a logical and kind of scary progression.
That really tightens it up. It stops the viewer from thinking, wait, why are we in London? And gets them thinking, oh, this is a prediction. It raises the stakes for the American audience immediately.
Right. It makes the UK segment feel urgent to the US viewer, and the US segment becomes this kind of how it started moment for the UK viewer. It just unifies the whole piece.
You know, there's actually a moment where he almost does this. He talks about a proposed dog ban in NYC housing.
I remember that.
And he says something like, it took London at least 2 years until they started banning dogs, implying New York is on a faster track. That's the seed of the argument right there.
Yes, that's exactly it. He's already doing it instinctively. The feedback is just to make that explicit, make it the thesis for the whole video. New York is speedrunning the London decline.
That frames it perfectly. It gives the whole video this forward momentum that keeps you hooked.
Okay, so let's shift to significance and relevance, specifically the evidence he uses. The video makes a really strong case for what he calls a two-tier justice system.
Right, contrasting how native citizens and immigrants are treated. It's a central pillar of the argument.
But I think there's a weakness in how the evidence is selected. He compares an 86-year-old man getting fined $300 for spitting a leaf with the grooming gangs avoiding prosecution for years.
It's an emotionally powerful comparison.
It is, but it's rhetorically risky. The Leaf story is so absurd, it almost sounds like satire.
Or fake news.
And if you don't validate the legal context of that story, a skeptical viewer might think the whole comparison is just a conspiracy theory.
And if they doubt the Leaf story, they might start to doubt the grooming gang stats, too.
Exactly. You lose credibility. So how do you strengthen that?
The suggestion is to steelman the argument. You need to acknowledge the bureaucratic, kind of petty nature of that fine first to show you get it, and then you pivot to the disparity in resources.
Okay, I like that strategy. So for an example, first you'd acknowledge that the Leaf fine is probably some, strict liability municipal code thing. Admit it's a letter of the law situation.
Right, you take the wind out of the skeptic's sails right away. You say, look, I know this is technically the law.
Yes, and then you pivot hard to the effort involved. You say, the state has the resources and the political will to prosecute an 86-year-old man for a leaf, but it claims it lacked the resources to investigate 250,000 cases of child abuse.
Ah, that's much stronger.
That pivot highlights the disparity in willpower, not just the absurdity of the fine. It changes the argument from the law is crazy to the government's priorities are corrupt.
And that makes the creator sound like he actually understands how the system works, which makes his critique of it that much more powerful.
Totally. And another quick example in that same area is the measles data. The video says measles is back and blames immigration. To make that rigorous, he should link it directly to the Restore Britain policy on health checks for migrants that comes up later in the ad.
Connect the problem to the solution.
Yes. Don't just shout about a disease. Say, this measles data is exactly why the Restore Britain policy on health screenings is so critical. It makes the political endorsement feel earned.
It really does. It moves it from just complaining into actual advocacy.
Okay, moving on to the last big point here, on core essence and engagement. This is about the reaction to that Rupert Lowe advertisement at the end. The creator frequently interrupts the ad to say things like, oh my God, he's cooking, or music to my ears.
Right. Very enthusiastic affirmation. But I think the weakness there is in the pacing of it all. As enthusiastic as he is, the constant interruptions actually break the rhetorical flow of Rupert Lowe's speech.
He calls the speech cinema and praises the aura, but then he steps all over the hero moments of the speech by talking over them. If it's really cinema, you don't want someone talking over the best lines in the movie.
That's a very good point. It dilutes the very impact he's trying to celebrate. So what's the suggestion?
It's simple, really. Just let the source clip play through its emotional hype points before jumping in.
Let's get specific. There's that moment where Lowe says, you don't think in election cycles, you think in seasons. And just as he's building to this big point about leaving a legacy,
He interrupts to say immediate aura. It just cuts the legs out from under the sentiment. It would be so much more effective to let Lowe finish that whole sentence about legacy, let the silence hang for a beat, and then comment. Let the aura actually land.
it's about letting the source material do the work for you. Aura, in the way he's using it, implies a commanding presence. But you can't display that if a YouTuber is shouting over your voice.
Paradoxically, to maximize the hype, you have to be quiet.
It's the difference between telling someone a joke is funny and just letting them laugh. If you have to tell me this guy has aura while he's talking, then maybe he doesn't. But if you let him speak and I feel it myself, then you've won.
Exactly. And another big one was when Lowe's talks about banning the burqa and halal slaughter. The host goes off on this tangent about kosher laws and Leviticus and some specific thing in Manchester.
Right, the theological distinction.
And while that's interesting to him, it totally distracts from the momentum of the ad. The actionable advice is to just save that breakdown for after the clip ends. Let the climax of the ad play out, then pause and say, okay, let's talk about that halal versus kosher point.
That feels much more disciplined. It shows he's curating the experience, not just reacting stream of consciousness. It elevates the whole thing from a live stream highlight to a structured piece of commentary.
Yes. And I think all this feedback, the tone, the structure, the evidence, the pacing, it all points to the same core idea.
What's that?
The creator has incredibly strong instincts and a very strong point of view, but sometimes the execution gets in the way of the argument's maximum impact. The raw energy is there, but a little refinement could turn a viral video into a truly persuasive political argument.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, so let's recap. The main actionable feedback from this critique. First, calibrate the slang. Keep using the gamer terminology and the high-energy insults for political opponents. That's the brand. But drop that persona when you're discussing the victims of crime. That protects your moral authority. Second, bridge the gap. You need to explicitly frame the New York segment as the before and the London segment as the after. Turn the geographic jump into a timeline arc. That dog band comparison is the perfect angle for this. Third, strengthen the comparisons. When you use an absurd example like the leaf fine, you have to validate it. Acknowledge the legal context so it doesn't sound like fake news. Steelman the argument so it's bulletproof against skeptics. And finally, let the content breathe. During the reaction segments, pause your commentary during the big hero moments of the source video. Let the speaker's emotional points actually land with the audience before you jump in with your own thoughts. We would love to see how these adjustments might impact your next commentary piece. Please feel free to submit your work back in again for more feedback. Thanks for listening to The Critique.